Today, I want to talk about industrial revolutions in all human history and why most African economies can no longer produce jobs, while our young people graduate from colleges and the economy cannot absorb them. Banks are not hiring, industrial loans are astronomically high for startups, and why so much of our consumables today are imported, better produced, and cheaper than our own home goods. To have an understanding why Africa is this the way it is today, you need to understand the history of industrial revolutions. First, industrial revolutions have to do with the transition to new manufacturing processes. An example is going from hand production methods to machine production methods, which will now lead to higher production, or transition from manual farming to mechanized farming. It is this transition that we call industrial revolutions. The key is this: once a new revolution comes on board, nations are expected to prepare their populations to adapt with the new skill sets to flow along with in the new revolution. For much of Africa, this is where we are lacking behind. We barely exist. We are hardly in the equation. I will tell you why. Now, every industrial revolution is unique. There are specific type of jobs that come available in every revolution. Some revolutions create agricultural jobs. Some create new tech jobs. Some create service-based industries. Some revolutions are internet-based. That means entire social production can be operated through the internet. Now, take note of what I'm about to say now. The lack of new creative technologies in Africa leading to new transitions is directly responsible why Africa cannot catch up with the rest of the world. Let me give you an example. 500 years ago, our parents make heaps of sand and plant yam tubers, wait for rain and harvest it in 9 months. 500 years later, we are still doing the same thing. We read about new technologies in Africa, but we do not apply it to our day-to-day living. This explains why Africa has not been able to overcome food security. We have practically failed to evolve. Now let's talk about industrial revolutions in history and how other countries evolved. The first industrial revolution was the transition to new manufacturing in the 1700s, 1700. This was when mechanization transformed agriculture with the invention of the steam engine. As mechanization took the place of manual labor, it gradually led to the abandonment of slave labor in social production. So most countries considered developed today, like the United States, Britain, and the rest, they transitioned to mechanized farming. But almost 500 years later, Africa is still dominant in agrarian agriculture. We fail to move with the time. We fail to move when the world moved. The second industrial revolution, also known as technology revolution, happened around the early 19th to 20th century. This revolution saw technological advancement in industries. This led to the emergence of new sources of energy, electricity, oil and gas, and all this led to the discovery and manufacture of the internal combustion engine. It led to new discoveries in chemical synthesis and new methods of communication, including telegraph, telephone, invention of automobiles, airplanes, and many more. The phase when most advanced countries today had a leap and left the rest of the world behind was the second industrial revolution. Again, Africa was nowhere to be found. Now, to most advanced countries today, when these transitions were going on, their educational systems prepared their graduates to fill in the gap. So for every industrial revolution, it is the responsibility of the government in power to prepare her people, prepare her students to fill in the gap. That is why it is important to invest in education, which most of our leaders in Africa just do not say. Around the second industrial revolution, this was when planes and automobiles were being manufactured. Concurrently, on the educational front, PhD students in universities focus their research on aeronautic sciences, improvements in automobile designs, fuel consumption efficiency research. So these were the things going on in the universities. You cannot find any country in the world today that is developed that her educational system is not developed. It goes hand in hand. Africa's poverty and backwardness, to a large extent, can be zeroed down to our educational system. When the educational system fails, the entire social economy fails. So you can now see that education works hand in hand with transitions in industrial revolutions, and investment in the educational system is related to job creation. You see why we advise our governments in Africa to invest in quality education. Unfortunately, they cannot connect the dots. Where was Africa? We slept while the world moved. We failed to move with the times. We failed to move when the world moved. Our post-independent leaders slept and continued to sleep while the world moved to the third industrial revolution. Now, what is the third industrial revolution all about? Remember, we spoke about the first revolution, which was the steam engine, agriculture. The second revolution, which came with technology revolution. The third revolution has to do with the digitalization of manufacturing and the transformation of goods and services. It brought about the rise of electronics, telecommunications, computers, and computer programming. It brought about computer commands initiated by robots. So a new thing came into human production. Robots were created that could do what man ordinarily would do, and they were doing it even better. So it was a transition where robots could do exactly what man could do. Nations jumped onto the third industrial revolution, transformed their entire economies. Again, where was Africa? Our leaders were sleeping. Now, to those that can remember the era of President Bill Clinton in the United States, Bill Clinton came at a time the US economy was sliding into a recession. Bill Clinton took advantage and invested in technological innovations in Silicon Valley. The purpose was to create jobs in the new revolution. The same message we have been shouting to our leaders in Nigeria over and over again, to take advantage of the unique population of Nigerian youth and invest in technology. With Clinton's investment in the internet economy sometime around 1992, where all American schools had internet labs, children and students all over America were introduced to computer use and its application. The end product was a revolutionized internet economy that created millions and millions of jobs. This was how the American economy had a leap in the 90s. But again, where is Africa? Our leaders were sleeping. Clinton investment in the internet sector at Silicon Valley saw to the reawakening of companies like Hewlett-Packard, one of the companies that was founded in the 30s. It also saw to the research revolution spearheaded by Stanford University Research Park in California, providing a base for the growth and expansion of General Electric, Apple Computers, Facebook, Google, and in Seattle, Washington, they had Microsoft. The third industrial revolution had young people sitting on their laptops in their parents' garages building apps and software that changed the world. This was how we had Facebook. When all this was happening, where were African youths? Our leaders were sleeping, our educational system was failing, and nothing was working in Africa. So you can see where we were when the world experienced the third industrial revolution. And another major thing that happened, especially in Nigeria, at the peak of the third industrial revolution, this was when Nitel failed. So Africa, we use our own hands to destroy our own economies. At a time the world advanced and explored in the third industrial revolution, our schools in Africa were failing. Our graduates were poorly trained. Majority of our graduates had no access to computers. Even when they do, no electricity to power their computers. Some of our academics could barely use computers. Our leaders could not even connect the dots between investing in education and job creation. Amidst all of this, then comes the fourth industrial revolution. So you can see that the world is moving. The world is not waiting for Africa. The fourth industrial revolution, I call it the Game of Thrones. It is the revolution of ideas. People that rule the world today are people with ideas. Does Africa have people of ideas? The fourth industrial revolution is a revolution where nations prepare their young people for the future. Take a country example like China. China sends thousands of her kids to study in Ivy Leagues in Europe and America. When these Chinese kids enter the US, they are not there to study arts and social science. They are there to study system sciences, robotic engineering, space sciences, biotech engineering. All this is happening at a time that our educational system in Africa is shut down. Our children sit at home for 10 months in a year, and you open the remaining 2 months, you rush them into examination, and you take them to the next class. And you expect that these are the children that will compete with Chinese kids the next 20 years? Africa is failing, not because Africans are not smart. Africa is failing because we have a leadership that is sleeping. A few years ago, we had argued that import substitution industrialization was the way forward for Africa. But again, poor education, poor infrastructure, epileptic power, bad leadership, and corruption has made Africa's industrialization drive less desirable and less competitive. China is flooding Africa with all kinds of goods. China's gateway to provide meaningful employment for her Ivy League educated population in this fourth industrial revolution is Africa. The Chinese build locomotive trains, airports, seaports, expressway, and pile loans on African government and dictate tariff regimes for China's imported goods. The Indians flood Africa with cheap medicines, fabric, and even plastics. Gradually, Africa produces primary goods she cannot consume and consume finished goods she cannot produce. Africa sleeps while the rest of the world is moving on. Today, when nations engage, they engage with sense. Diplomats in foreign countries are there strictly to take advantage of whatever is available. In 2016, China offered 60 billion in loans and aid to African countries. The Chinese said the African leaders should come and take the money. Every single African leader in all the 50 states, they left whatever they were doing and rushed to China to pick up loans. Do you want to know why? They wanted to pick up loans to develop their continent, but it was a ploy by the Chinese. It was a new form of colonialism. There are those who have argued that, oh yes, it was a good thing the Africans went there to help develop their countries. But ask you and me, we have collected 60 billion. Where is the money today? In the fourth industrial revolution, every country seeks for the best possible way to take advantage of your economy and make it a gateway for their goods and services under regulated tariff regimes. This is where African governments, most African governments just don't get it. If cheaper and finer goods keep flowing to your country, ranging from pharmaceuticals, plastics, computers, clothing, how will local industries in your country grow? How will jobs be created? While some call it the fourth industrial revolution, I call it a dog-eat-dog revolution. If Nigeria must get it right and catch up with the rest of the world, we need to do two things. One, invest in quality education. Enforce computer education at all levels. Fund development and research. fix power supply, and two, if possible, I wrote about this sometime in the Guardian some years back, nationalize our internet trunk lines, make internet data cheap or free to attract BPOs. If not, we remain locked out in the fourth industrial revolution. Visit my YouTube channel and click on subscribe button to enable you get all my videos once they are out. The name of my YouTube channel is Prince Will Odidi. Join me, let's have this conversation about development in Africa. I am Prince Will Odidi. I'm always here to have a conversation. Thank you and God bless you all.